José Mourinho to Newcastle United. Okay, so in case you missed the breaking news earlier today, José Mourinho has been let go of his club Roma. It follows just one win in the last 6 games. Now, obviously, he's a massive international manager, huge reputation. Whatever happens with José Mourinho, it's going to get loads of column inches in almost every single paper around the world. And naturally, he's been linked predominantly by national sort of news outlets and stuff like that to Newcastle United. But here's the Newcastle perspective coming up on if he is firstly a good fit, if it's going to happen, and what the likelihood is. So like I say, it is a case of it's national news that's kind of spinning this. We've got a Newcastle Supporters Worldwide Facebook page. I'll put the link below. There has been a couple of comments, a couple of people sharing posts, mainly memes and silly sort of stuff, but a few people suggesting, is it a good fit and stuff like that. So I thought I'd just jump on and kind of discuss my kind of opinions on it and get your opinions as well to see what you guys think. So firstly, it's a well-known fact that Eddie Howe wasn't Newcastle United owner's #1 choice. It was Unai Emery, who's doing a fantastic job at Aston Villa, and ever since then, it's almost been perpetrated by national press that he's not the long-term manager, Eddie Howe, for the club. However, personally for me, I've backed him in the last few weeks when he was in the middle of a slump. I think he's a fantastic manager. I'll touch on it a little bit more with all the benefits that he does for Newcastle United, but he's absolutely fantastic. He's grown into the role, and I can see him getting better with the club as well, kind of grown on the same trajectory. He's already managed to qualify Newcastle for Champions League football, which 2 years ago was absolutely unfathomable in such a short period of time. But we'll look at José Mourinho first. So what's the pluses of José Mourinho? So firstly, he's a huge international manager. So you would imagine coming up with the transfer windows, he's going to have such a massive pull and power. He's going to have a Rolodex of all these amazing superstars who we would be able to convince to come to Newcastle. Possibly maybe that Eddie Howe couldn't necessarily do. So that is a plus for José Mourinho. The other side of it is he's a dark artist. So what he does is he plays all the dark arts. He knows how to go down, claim for fouls, all gang up on the ref. He does all that. You see that at all the top clubs. You see Man U, Man City, all that. It's kind of game management a little bit if you want to put it under that umbrella. But we don't see a lot of that under Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe's football that he's kind of turned Newcastle into is a high press team, high intense team, fantastic watch. Personally, even as a neutral, if I took my Newcastle hat off, I would watch Newcastle United. It's very exciting the way they play. Always exciting football, whether it's a defending, attacking, huge scorelines. If you look over the last 6 months, absolutely exciting football to watch. I mean, considering we've had Brucey Ball and stuff like that, and we've had Benitez with a lot of defensive football under the past, it's really is a breath of fresh air to watch. So that's all come back under Eddie Howe. We know José Mourinho, depending on what kind of team he has and what players he has available, he does often go into a defensive formation, just try to soak up a lot of possession and can play on the counter. Would Newcastle fans be in favour of going from the football we've got now into that kind of football that José Mourinho might bring? The other positive with José Mourinho is he's proven winner. So he wins a lot of trophies. He generally only takes clubs on for 2-3 years, and then something happens, whether it's a fallout with the club, whether it's a fallout with the players, whatever it is. He generally is not what you would class as a long-term established manager that can grow a club, kind of like Eddie Howe's proven at the moment that he's doing for Newcastle. But Newcastle fans, myself included, are absolutely desperate for a trophy. José Mourinho, you could argue, and you're probably right, he probably does stand more chance of winning a trophy for Newcastle than Eddie Howe would possibly get in a shorter period of time. So it's very much a short fix for getting that trophy. It gets the monkey off the back, and it gets Newcastle fans exactly what they've craved for many, many years now, almost generations. That first bit of silverware. That being said, Eddie Howe is not a million miles away from getting Newcastle United silverware. You only have to look at last year. He managed to get Newcastle into a final, albeit it was against a high-flying Manchester United. God, I would have loved to play them at the minute in a final because they're nowhere like the team they were last year. But we just didn't turn up for the final. It wasn't our best performance, especially when we went 1-0 down. It just wasn't the day for Newcastle. Didn't really perform, didn't deserve it. We can't argue too much with the decision. But if you look at this season, he's had additional games to play. So he's had Champions League football, loads of injuries. He's already managed to get a scalp in the Cup of Manchester United and Manchester City. And it was in penalties where Chelsea actually knocked us out of the Cup. So, I mean, with penalties, it's an absolute toss-up most of the time. 50-50 chance of getting through, so very unlucky. And it's still going on at the moment. The teams that you've got in that Cup, I mean, you've got Chelsea against Middlesbrough in the semi-final. We had a real chance if we'd have just knocked Chelsea out of having that first bit of silverware under Eddie Howe. And I'm convinced that if we had a little bit of a less of an injury problem, that we would not only be still in the cup, but we would still probably be in Europe. Whether that albeit is in Champions League football or European football through the third place qualification, that's debatable. But for me, if it wasn't for the injury crisis, Eddie Howe would be fighting on all fronts. He would still be in Europe. He would possibly still be in the cup, even though he's had the worst run this season of anyone in terms of luck of getting teams in the cup. And he'd probably be on for a top 4, top 5, top 6 finish. However, it's pointless talking about that. What's done is done. The injury crisis has been, we're talking about the José Mourinho thing. So, José Mourinho, we've known over the period of the last few years, he's not frightened to throw players under the bus. We've seen that numerous times. He called Luke Shaw out, if I remember rightly, a few years ago. He's did it in Tottenham. He's did it almost every single place that he's worked. He's kind of made almost a scapegoat and chuck loads of pressure on it. You see, Eddie Howe, he's the complete polar opposite. He'll defend his players. You don't hear him too much whinging about the injury crisis, even though it was absolutely horrendous. He backs his players all the time. I've never known him one time to throw someone under the bus. Even this Lewis Hall situation where it's clear he doesn't fancy him. He was asked directly in a press conference, what's your thoughts on Lewis Hall? Are you keeping him? His answer was, he looked to the press guy for Newcastle United and said, oh no, he is one for the future, but we don't want to talk about that right now. So even though you can clearly tell he doesn't like someone, he's not going to throw it under the bus. He's not going to blame the transfer on Chelsea saying it was an overpayment, or he blame it on the directors, the recruitment, none of that. He defends the club, he defends his players, and personally as a fan, that's fantastic. Eddie Howe comes across great in interviews. Yeah, you know, he's not going to create any sort of headlines, create loads of buzz and stuff like that. It's very monotone in his interviews. He doesn't give too much to the press. He doesn't let press know necessarily if players are going to be playing at the weekend, which is a killer for fantasy football if you're like me and you've got a few Newcastle players in your team. However, if you take a step back, that's kind of what you would want as a manager. If you ignore fantasy football and all that different stuff, you want your manager not to give away too much to opposition managers, because it's not necessarily in the press conference you're talking to the press. You're basically giving every single information that you've got out there to your competitors. They're going to look, they're going to see, right, okay, Trippier's not playing today, right, so they're probably likely to play him. Gives a massive insight. So you want to keep cards close to your chest when you're in these press conference situations. So I would say, even though blockbuster José Mourinho, he goes off, it's fantastic to watch all that different stuff. I like that, but I like watching that at another club. I wouldn't necessarily like to see José Mourinho at Newcastle and see all that giveaway and all the problems that come with it. So that's definitely one for Eddie Howe in that column. Now, another plus for José Mourinho, even though you could argue this is a kind of plus and negative, he's a great short-term manager. He would fix Newcastle short-term. He would get them playing fantastic. Like I say, probably challenging for the league, if not get all the players in. However, he is a short-term manager, and it's long-term damage that you do, and it's almost one step forward and 2 steps back somewhat. With Eddie Howe, you can see he's got all the building blocks in. He improves almost every single player. He reignites the fan base. You can see Bruno, all the rest of the players love playing at Newcastle. You can see that with every single time we win, we get a group team photo and stuff like that. Every interview, all the Newcastle players are passionate. You can see they want to play under him. He's reignited the fan base. You could argue it's probably easy to reignite the fan base with the owners and all the excitement, but for me, Eddie Howe's done an absolutely fantastic, stellar job. There should be no one calling for his head if you're a Newcastle fan, in my opinion. José Mourinho, the link, it is kind of laughable a little bit. You can understand why it is, because he's continental, he's mainstream and all this different stuff. But for me, I don't think he gets to Newcastle. I also don't think he's going to get a top 4 job. I could imagine him going back to a club like Chelsea, who are in a kind of transition kind of thing, but I wouldn't even put him in Aston Villa or them sort of teams that are doing well, even at Brighton. So where is José Mourinho going to end up? I would love to see him, like I say, personally in the Premier League. Love to see his interviews back every week. That would be fantastic. But where would he go, in your opinion? So like we always try to do now, we want to try to create an engaging sort of comment section. We do reply to every single comment. Let us know what you think the future is for José Mourinho. Do you think he should be coming at Newcastle, whether it's now or in the future? What's your thoughts on Eddie Howe? Obviously, a lot of the pressure seems to have kind of evaporated over the last couple of weeks, and rightly so. But what's your thoughts? Don't forget to like the video if you've enjoyed it. Even if you haven't, give it a cheeky little like. It helps us massively in the YouTube search. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.